$100 for the single mom. The joke cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot wrapped in laughter. I stood still under the spotlight, a place meant for the bride, not me. Eyes from every corner locked onto my face, as if I were the final act in a long night of expensive wine and cruel amusements. 200, another man shouted, raising a glass of champagne. The room roared again. My daughter clutched the hem of my dress. Her tiny hand trembled. Her round eyes didn't understand why her mother was being auctioned. My sister, Vanessa, lounged in her designer wedding dress, legs crossed, a smirk playing at the corner of her lips. "It's just for charity," she said sweetly into the mic. "Who knows, maybe my sister will get lucky tonight." I should have walked away. I should have screamed. But I stood there, silent, stunned, until a quiet voice rose from the very back of the room. $1 million. Laughter stopped. Time froze. Heads turned. No one knew who he was. No suit, no expensive watch, no explanation. Just a man with eyes that locked onto mine like he'd seen me before. And when the spotlight caught his face, I remembered. He was the only person who ever held my hand when the world had already let go. If someone asked me why I came to the engagement party that night, I don't think I'd know how to answer. Maybe it was for my daughter. She kept asking about Auntie Vanessa. Someone she only knew through faded pictures I hadn't had the heart to throw away. Maybe a small, foolish part of me still believed my sister had changed. That maybe, after years of silence, a phone call could mean a new beginning. I didn't want to believe it was just another trap, gift wrapped in silk and gold. Vanessa had called one afternoon, just as I was ending a shift at the community health clinic. Her voice still sounded the same. Sugar on the surface, ice underneath. "Are you free this weekend? I'd love for you to come to the engagement. I mean, we're sisters, aren't we?" I hesitated, but in the end, I said yes. Maybe I wanted to show her I wasn't bitter, that I wasn't jealous, that even after she cut me off, even after our family marked me as the stain for becoming a single mother, I could still choose grace. I wore a simple navy dress, light makeup, held my daughter's hand. I told myself we'd sit quietly in the back, smile politely, eat a slice of cake, and leave unnoticed. I had no idea I'd be the centerpiece of the night's cruelest performance. I still remember the first time I met Lucas. I was doing night shifts at a private hospital, part of my practicum after dropping out of school to give birth. Lucas came in after a car accident. He was alive, but his spine was damaged. He couldn't speak, could barely move. No ID, no family, no visitors. The staff called him John Doe. I called him Lucas, not for any real reason. The name just sounded steady, quiet. He never said a word. But his eyes always followed me. When I changed his dressings, when I wiped down his arms, when I sat by his bed, whispering stories to keep myself awake. I didn't know if he understood. I only knew that out of all the patients I cared for, he was the one who made me stay a little longer. One night, I held his hand and said, "You don't need to remember anyone. Just remember that someone believed you'd make it." The next morning, the bed was empty. No discharge papers, no next of kin, just a rumor from the head nurse. Someone came for him, well-dressed, probably someone important. I didn't ask. I couldn't afford to. I had a newborn burning up with fever at home. I didn't have the time to hold on to a name that might not be real. 4 years later, I stood on the stage of my sister's lavish engagement party, being sold as a charity auction item. And the man who once didn't have a name walked back into my life, with a sentence that would change everything. $1 million. The room was breathless. $1 million. The words still rang in my ears like a bell tolling. Not an echo of cruelty this time, but a silence that stunned. Vanessa froze in her chair, champagne flute mid-air. Her lashes fluttered fast, as if trying to blink away a version of reality that hadn't been written in her script. From the back of the ballroom, the man stepped forward, slowly, without spectacle. He wore a pale gray shirt, no tie, no watch. His black hair was neatly cut, his shoes worn at the edges. But it wasn't his clothes that made the crowd fall quiet. It was the way he walked, unfazed by 100 stares. The way he looked straight at me, like I was the only person in the room. When he stopped in front of me, close, so close, I finally saw his eyes. And I remembered. "Lucas?" I whispered. I wasn't sure if I said it out loud or only in my head. He nodded, no smile, no words. Just a quiet recognition that wrapped itself around my chest like warmth I hadn't felt in years. The event host, a man hired to orchestrate delight, stumbled on his words. Yes, sir, you've officially won the special auction. Would you, perhaps like a few moments to speak privately with?" Lucas didn't respond. He didn't need to. He turned to my daughter, who was standing close, small fingers tangled in my skirt, her wide black eyes round with confusion. And his gaze softened. Unlike every other person in that room, he didn't look at her like an accessory to my shame. Then his voice, "Can we leave?" It was low, rough, like it hadn't been used much lately, but each word landed steady, solid, certain. I nodded. I didn't think. I just nodded. The way your body does when it's waited too long for someone to finally ask, "Do you want to get out of here?" Outside the hotel lobby, the night air was cool against my skin. Behind us, music and laughter buzzed like a world I had never belonged to. My daughter clutched my hand tighter. Lucas walked beside me in silence, as if we'd always done this, walked away from noise that never deserved us. "I thought you disappeared," I spoke first. "No one knew where you went. I started to think, maybe you weren't real." He turned slightly, his eyes just as I remembered them. But now, beneath the calm, something deeper shimmered, something close to gratitude. "I didn't disappear," he said. "I went looking for myself." He paused, and when I was strong enough, I came looking for the one person who saw me, even when I couldn't see myself. I didn't know what to say. Those words, simple, generous, landed too gently for someone who had grown used to being bruised by every kindness. Lucas stepped closer, then lowered himself, kneeling slightly so he was eye level with my daughter. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen on him that night, and asked softly, "Do you like ice cream?" She hesitated, then looked up at me, asking with her eyes. I nodded. She nodded back. Lucas stood and turned to me. "I didn't come here for the game," he said. "I came to repay a debt, and if you'll let me, I'd like to start with a scoop of vanilla." We sat by the window of a cozy little ice cream shop tucked on the corner of a quiet street. It wasn't a 5-star restaurant. No candles, no roses, no violin in the background. Just the soft glow of warm yellow lights and the gentle sound of spoons clinking against ceramic bowls. But after everything that had just happened, this place felt like a temporary refuge, somewhere I could finally breathe. My daughter was busy scooping vanilla ice cream shaped like a teddy bear, humming to herself. Across from me sat Lucas, once just a name I made up, a face I never thought I'd see again. He didn't touch his ice cream, he just watched me, silently. "Where have you been all these years?" I couldn't wait any longer. Lucas leaned back, fingers interlaced, his eyes drifting toward the glass window. His voice was deep, but warm. I woke up the next morning. My body still wasn't working right, but my mind, it was clearer than ever. I remembered my name. I remembered the crash, but what I couldn't forget was your eyes. I blinked. I hadn't thought I left anything behind that could be remembered so vividly. "I had no one," he continued. "No family, no friends. But I had this one small memory. Someone holding my hand when the whole world walked away. I clung to that memory, like a compass to get back." I looked at him. Gone was the silent patient. In front of me now was a man who had walked through darkness, carrying only the light someone else left for him. "After I left the hospital, I moved overseas for rehab," he said. "An international medical nonprofit funded my recovery. They didn't know who I was, but my name was still in their system from years ago when I was one of their donors." So, Lucas is your real name? I smiled slightly, surprised at how relieved I felt asking that. He nodded. Lucas Everett. Before the crash, I was an investor, mostly in medical tech. After the crash, I was just someone trying to survive. He paused, like he was choosing his next words with care. A year ago, I came back to the city to revisit old connections. I happened to see a video, an interview with Vanessa. Her face looked too much like yours, so I started digging. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't look into you out of curiosity, he added quickly, as if trying to ease my alarm. I just wanted to know if you were okay. And then I saw you at a charity event with your daughter. You didn't see me, but I saw you standing there in a corner, alone. He lowered his head slightly, his voice softened. I didn't know Vanessa would do what she did tonight, but the moment she called you up, I couldn't sit still anymore. I bit my lip. By then, my daughter had fallen asleep in my lap. I gently ran my fingers through her hair, heart tangled in too many things at once. It wasn't exactly gratitude, and it wasn't entirely grief. It was something in between, a quiet disbelief that someone might actually still be on my side. What do you know about Vanessa? I asked. Lucas looked at me for a long moment before answering. Enough to know you don't belong in her shadow. Lucas slid a brown envelope across the cafe table. He said nothing. We were seated in a quiet spot, far from the noise of the city. Outside, the rain fell in soft threads, the kind that made people remember things they hadn't meant to. I wasn't sure I should show you this, he said finally, eyes fixed on his untouched coffee. But I realized silence is a kind of betrayal, too. I stared at the envelope. My fingers trembled slightly, not out of fear, but because I already knew. Whatever was inside, it would change the way I saw my family forever. I opened it. Inside was a copy of a legal document, a property transfer form. The seal still sharp, the names printed clear. My name as the grantor, Vanessa Claire Monroe as the recipient. This is the deed to the Kingsley apartment, I murmured. The small apartment my grandparents had left me, the one I lived in during college. A gift from my grandfather when I became the first grandchild to make it to university. When did I sign this? I asked, though a heavy guess had already formed inside me. Lucas looked at me. His eyes weren't angry, just sad. 6 days after you gave birth, you were in the hospital, feverish, losing blood, and you believed your mother when she said it was just paperwork. To help manage the property, she told you. My chest tightened. I remembered that day. Mom came in holding a thick envelope, said softly, "Just some documents for the apartment. I'll keep it safe. Sign and rest, sweetheart." I signed. I didn't ask, because it was my mother. Vanessa was behind it, Lucas said, his voice steady. I have screenshots of her messages to your mom. One of them reads, "She's lucky she even survived. Let me handle the paperwork. She won't understand any of it." I closed my eyes, not because I was shocked, but because I had always felt it. I just never had proof. Lucas slid one more paper toward me, a property appraisal. The apartment was now worth nearly $500,000. She used it as collateral to secure her first business loan, he said. The company she brags about, the one making headlines, was built on something that was stolen from her own sister. I looked at him. His eyes held no pity, only a steady, quiet kind of kindness, the kind that said, "You don't owe me tears. I'm here anyway." "I don't want her money," I whispered. "I just want her to stop." Lucas gave a soft, knowing smile, like someone who had heard those exact words before. Maybe that's what makes you different from her. My phone buzzed just before noon. An unfamiliar number. No name. I almost declined. But something in my gut made me pause. And when the screen lit up, "Vanessa is calling." I knew. She could no longer pretend. I picked up. I didn't say a word. Her voice came after a few hesitant seconds. "Hey, sis?" That same voice, sweet, soft, deceptively gentle, like sugar melted into crushed ice. "Can we talk for a few minutes?" I didn't respond. I waited. "I think maybe you misunderstood what happened last night." Misunderstood? I repeated, keeping my voice steady. I mean, the auction thing. It was just a part of the fundraiser. I didn't expect everyone to take it so seriously. I really didn't think you'd feel offended. I just wanted you to have a little fun. I let out a quiet laugh, not loud, just enough to slice the tension in half. Fun? You thought selling your sister in front of your rich friends was fun? My voice stayed light, but there was steel under the softness. Or was it just another way to strip away whatever dignity I had left? Silence. I could almost hear her breathing quicken. Someone's been filling your head with lies, she snapped. The sweetness gone. Is it that Lucas guy? You don't even know who he is. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and stopped myself from laughing again. She sounded like a kid who'd been caught cheating on a test, and blamed the mailman. He knows exactly who you are, Vanessa, more than you'd like. He showed me something you should have confessed a long time ago. Vanessa went quiet. I know about the apartment. I know Mom brought the documents to the hospital. I remember everything. You think I don't? You're wrong. I took a deep breath, not out of anger, but to stay grounded. I wouldn't let this slide back into the pattern she loved, me silent, her in control. You always win because you know I've never fought back. But that changes now. There was a pause, long, almost fragile. Then, in a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from her, "What do you want?" That question, in all these years she'd never asked me, not because she didn't know, but because she'd never cared to. I gave myself a few seconds, then I answered, calm and clear, "I don't want anything from you, Vanessa, but I will take back everything that's mine." And I hung up. No goodbye. That night, Lucas called me out to the balcony. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle as always. I didn't answer right away. I was staring out at the city lights, heart strangely lighter, not because it was over, but because something had finally begun. "I'm not afraid of her anymore," I said, "and for the first time, I know what freedom feels like." Lucas didn't reply. He just nodded. And in that silence, I understood. Some people don't come to save you. They come to remind you that you've always been capable of saving yourself. We met again on a quiet Sunday morning in a little cafe tucked deep inside a narrow alleyway. Outside, a light mist of rain kissed the windows. Inside, it was warm, still, safe. My daughter sat beside me, doodling across a napkin, occasionally lifting her head to ask, "How do you spell ice cream, Mommy?" Lucas arrived on time. Same simple shirt, same calm demeanor. And those eyes, the kind that had seen too much loneliness to ever judge anyone again. We didn't speak much at first. Just a gentle hello, a glance, and a warm cup of tea pushed across the table. After a moment of silence, Lucas spoke. "I think you need a new beginning, not to escape, but to rebuild." I nodded. Something inside me had been waiting for those words for a long, long time. "I have an apartment out in the suburbs," he continued. "Close to a school, near a park, quiet, big enough for you and your daughter. If you'd like, I'll rent it to you for next to nothing for the first year. Just to give you time, to breathe, to find your feet again." I opened my mouth to protest. My instinct was always to turn down kindness, like I didn't deserve it. Like being in someone's debt was worse than being invisible. But Lucas saw through me. "This isn't charity," he said softly. "It's an investment. I'm investing in the woman who once held my hand when my whole life was falling apart." I fell quiet. He placed a file on the table, neatly bound. "This is the proposal for a community project I'm launching. A support center for single mothers, skills training, job connections, even shelter if needed. I need someone to run it, someone who truly understands what it means to walk through that door." I looked at him, and for the first time in years, I saw a path. Not an easy one, but mine. "Are you sure?" I asked quietly. "I have no degree, no experience running anything. I've been the family's disappointment for as long as I can remember." Lucas shook his head. He smiled, softly, like he meant it. You don't need a degree to have a good heart, and sometimes the ones called burdens are the only ones who know how to carry others. I looked over at my daughter. She was coloring the sun with a black pencil. I gently took it from her hand and gave her the yellow one. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "I think the sun should be this color." She looked up at me, then nodded. Hard. Lucas watched too, and I realized the light in his eyes didn't come from the room. It came from this moment. I turned to him. "I'll take the offer," I said. "I'm ready." The apartment in the suburbs sat in a quiet neighborhood, shaded by old trees, with the faint scent of freshly cut grass floating in the breeze. When I stepped inside, something in me softened, not from nostalgia, but from something far rarer in my life: peace. The walls were painted a soft off-white. Linen curtains hung gently by the windows, and the wooden floors still smelled faintly of new polish. Each room was simple but warm. Lucas had even left a few toys tucked into the corner, like he knew that a house doesn't feel like home until a child feels safe inside it. I placed my suitcase down and opened the window. Sunlight poured in. For the first time in years, I didn't have to watch the clock for my next shift. Didn't have to calculate rent. Didn't have to brace myself against family glances that treated me like a stain on the family history. My daughter ran from room to room laughing. "Mom, there's a perfect place for hide and seek." I laughed too. And then I cried. But this time, it wasn't grief. It was knowing, finally, that I was walking the right way. A week passed quietly. Mornings were spent learning basic management skills through the materials Lucas gave me. Afternoons at the park with my daughter. Evenings I typed notes for the center we were planning to open. Lucas didn't come by much. He gave me space. Every night he would text, "You doing okay?" And I would always reply, "Okay. Thank you for trusting me." Something was building between us, not something loud or obvious, just trust, quietly unfolding in the silence. Then came Friday. I found a white envelope in the mailbox, perfectly placed, no return address. I opened it. The letter was printed on thick cardstock, neatly folded, stamped with the seal of a well-known law firm. "Dear Anna Monroe, we represent our client, Ms. Vanessa Claire Monroe, in the matter of a property dispute concerning the Kingsley Street apartment. As per the legal document signed and notarized in XXXX, Miss Monroe is the sole lawful heir. Any actions that may affect her reputation or her property will be subject to legal consequence." I read it 3 times. My chest tightened like a cold hand had reached inside and squeezed. Vanessa had made her first move. No phone call, no apology, no warning, just lawyers. I sank down onto the front step, numb. Inside, my daughter was coloring quietly. The afternoon had been peaceful, until the knife of an old betrayal slipped in again. Lucas texted a few minutes later. "I know, don't sign anything, I'm handling it." I replied with only one line. My sister never knew how to let go. But this time, I'm not stepping back. Chapter 8. Before the Storm. That evening, Lucas took me and my daughter to a small lakeside restaurant. Not for business, not to discuss legal strategies, just dinner. I knew because he didn't bring his laptop. The air was cool. A breeze from the lake carried the smell of pine and water. The restaurant had only a few wooden tables, each with a tiny candle flickering gently. Lucas had reserved the farthest one, by the railing, where the lake shimmered under the evening lights. My daughter quickly made friends with a bowl of pasta and a box of crayons the waitress handed her. Lucas ordered creamy soup and a glass of white wine. I went with roasted chicken and mashed potatoes, something simple. Safe. "I forget sometimes," I said, sipping warm tea, eyes on the lake, "that a meal can be a kind of healing." Lucas smiled. The candlelight brushed across his face, softening him in ways the daytime never quite did. "When I was little," he said, "my mother used to bake apple tarts whenever she was sad. Even if no one ate them, she baked anyway, as if touching the dough, smelling cinnamon in the oven, gave her some illusion of control." I nodded. I understood. And you? He asked gently, turning toward me. What do you do when everything gets too heavy? I clean, I said quietly. I mop floors, I wash blankets, fold tiny socks, I become a machine. Then I smiled, shaking my head. We're both kind of weird, aren't we? Not weird, he said, his voice low and calm. Weird is hurting people because you're hurting. We just clean. We sat in silence for a while, not awkward. Just quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty. My daughter eventually fell asleep on the bench, head resting against my bag. I moved to lift her, but Lucas reached first, gently, instinctively. He picked her up and held her close. I froze for a moment, not because it startled me, but because she didn't flinch, like she'd known that embrace for years. You're good at this, I whispered. I thought I'd be a father once, he said, eyes lowered. But the accident took that part of life from me. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words didn't come. So instead, I reached out and held his hand, the one near the untouched wine glass. His hand didn't tremble, and he didn't pull away. We just sat there, under soft candlelight, beside a sleeping child. Two people not yet whole, but slowly learning how to put the pieces back together. Later, when Lucas drove us back to the apartment, he didn't come inside. He stood at the doorstep, hesitating, like someone holding back a truth that didn't yet have a name. I'm not good at being someone's rock, he said, voice hushed. But if you ever need someone just so you're not standing alone, I'm here. I nodded. Not a promise, just a quiet way to say, this time, I won't run. I walked into the lawyer's office in simple clothes, hair tied back, documents tucked firmly in hand. No more downward glances. No more trembling hands at the sight of paperwork. I wasn't here to ask for permission. I was here to claim what was mine. The attorney, Miss Fletcher, was a sharp, middle-aged woman Lucas had introduced me to. Once a prosecutor, now an independent lawyer specializing in family asset disputes and contested wills. You want to file a lawsuit against your sister? She asked. Her tone wasn't judgmental. Just direct, clear. I nodded. No hesitation. I want the truth out in the open. No matter how it ends, I want my daughter to know her mother didn't stay silent. Miss Fletcher gave a small nod. She switched on the recorder and began asking me, point by point, the day the property transfer was signed, the hospital context, why I never double-checked, my relationship with my mother, the years that followed. Each question felt like scissors, snipping open old stitches. But I didn't flinch, not a single tear. I told everything, no additions, no dramatics, because truth, when spoken calmly, cuts deeper than any accusation. By the end, Miss Fletcher leaned back and looked at me. This case won't be easy, but with the evidence Lucas gathered, and if your mother agrees to testify, we can request the court to freeze the asset for legal review. I don't want to seize her company, I said. I just want my apartment and my name back. You'll be attacked, she warned. Media, social platforms. Vanessa has PR, money, and a perfect image. I have a daughter, I replied. And I knew, if I didn't teach her how to stand up, then all I'd teach her was how to submit. I chose the first lesson. Lucas was waiting for me outside, leaning against the car. He didn't ask anything. He just looked at me. I nodded. No smile, but something in my eyes had changed. It's begun, I said. He opened the car door for me. Good, he said. Because the real battle isn't in court, it's in the memory, the one you've let others rewrite for too long. I turned to him. You think I'm rewriting it now? Lucas smiled, just barely, but it was enough to soften the overcast sky. You're not just rewriting it, you're rewriting yourself. 3 days after filing the lawsuit, I woke up to a phone full of notifications, texts, emails, social media alerts. Every app I opened had something waiting, and none of it kind. Unbelievable. Jealous of her own sister. Stayed quiet when she was broke, now she bites back when her sister's successful. Poor Vanessa. Built her empire only to be torn down by blood. Single mom suing for fame? Sounds like a rich mom wannabe. I didn't need to see who posted them. I already knew. Vanessa had made her move. That afternoon, an article popped up on the homepage of a popular tabloid, the kind that thrived off feminist drama. Young CEO Vanessa Monroe sued by estranged sister, a dropout, single mother with documented mental health history. I sat still in front of the screen. Each word landed like a needle. The article didn't use harsh words, but each line was a scalpel disguised as sympathy. The sister reportedly sought treatment for postpartum depression, lacked stable employment, previously received government support, now backed by an unidentified male investor. And at the very end, one paragraph, short but lethal. Sources suggest the lawsuit may be orchestrated by someone else, possibly an attempt at public recognition after years in her sister's shadow. I turned off the screen. Sat in silence. No tears, no outbursts, just cold. That night, Lucas knocked on my door. He brought a laptop and a bag of cinnamon waffles. Like always, he never came empty-handed, and he never came to make me act strong. He opened up 2 links. One, a legal analysis from an independent expert, stating that Vanessa could face counter-investigation for abusing legal documentation against someone recovering from a medical condition. The other, a piece from a women's advocacy group. Why are women called attackers when they finally find the courage to speak? The media is a double-edged sword, Lucas said, voice low. She thinks she controls the blade, but the more she wields it to silence others, the more she cuts herself. I nodded, but I didn't smile. I'm okay, I said. It's just the first time I'm seeing how steep the cost of stepping out of the dark really is. Lucas sat beside me, not touching. Just there. Don't let the spotlight make you forget who you are, he said. Everything you've endured, it's finally mattering right now. I looked at him, longer than usual. You know, I said softly, I don't want fame. I don't even need to win this case. I just want my daughter to grow up and never ask, why did Mom always bow her head? Lucas gently squeezed my hand. Then you've already won. 2 days later, I reopened my personal social media. Not to fight back, not to explain. I posted a single photo, me and my daughter, in our new kitchen beside a plate of slightly burnt toast. Captioned, "We're still here, still eating, still loving. What I've lost doesn't define who I'm becoming." No hashtags, no drama, but I knew, somewhere, Vanessa would see it, and she would understand. The storm was no longer blowing in the direction she chose. The phone rang in the late afternoon. I was sitting by the window, jotting down task lists for the support center Lucas and I were building. My daughter was doodling all over the back of her hand with a marker, quietly humming an English song she'd learned at school. The name on the screen? Mom. I couldn't remember the last time she called. Maybe it was when I gave birth, or earlier, the day I told her I dropped out of school. I stared at the screen. It didn't ring a second time. Just one long tone, like a sound dragged from the throat of someone swallowing something too big to speak. I answered, "Hello." My voice was steadier than I expected, nothing for a few seconds. Then her voice, soft, small, but still carrying the same timbre I remembered. "Anna, it's me, it's Mom." I said nothing. "I saw the article about you and the others. There were pictures too. She's grown so fast." Still, I didn't speak. "I'm not calling to scold you. I saw what you're doing, what you're going through." A sigh followed, long and old, like it carried the weight of decades behind it. "Vanessa told me not to believe it. She said someone put you up to this, that you're doing it for attention. But when I saw the photos, read every line, I knew she was wrong." I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. Still silent. "I was wrong, wasn't I?" Her voice cracked. "Back then, I made you sign that paper. I really thought I was just helping hold the deed. You were so weak, and I didn't expect." She paused, and then I heard something I never thought I'd hear from her, a tremble. "I'm not taking sides, Anna. I don't know how to talk to you anymore. After everything, I know no number of phone calls will undo what I did." I closed my eyes. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel anger. Just exhaustion. I called today because I don't want to lose you too, she said. I don't know what to do, but if you need me to testify, I will. I can't live with the silence anymore. Each word sank into me. I took a deep breath, and for the first time during that call, I spoke. Do you know how long I've waited to hear that? On the other end, I heard a sound, a sob, maybe, or maybe just the wind slipping through the cracks of an old woman's window, someone who had just realized silence can also be a weapon. I'll send over the documents, I said, if you're ready. I'll read them, she replied. This time, I'll read everything. I nodded, not because I trusted her again, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. Goodbye, Mom. The call ended, but I knew an old door had creaked open for the first time in years. Not wide, but just enough to let in the light. The courtroom was small, cold, and smelled faintly of paper and old wood. I sat in the plaintiff's bench. Beside me was Miss Fletcher, calm, composed, razor sharp. Lucas didn't sit next to me today. He sat farther back, just where I could glance and know he was still there. Across the room, Vanessa entered, poised, polished, hair pinned high, a tailored coat. Her smile calculated just enough to look natural on camera. She came with her own attorney, tall, assertive, flipping through documents like he was slicing air. Vanessa didn't look at me. Her eyes never met mine, but I saw her neck hold a little too stiffly. As if she didn't hold it high, something inside her might fall apart. The judge was a woman in her 50s. Her voice wasn't loud, but carried the kind of weight that silenced a room the second she spoke. This hearing concerns a property dispute between two siblings, the plaintiff, Anna Monroe, and the defendant, Vanessa Monroe, regarding ownership of the apartment at 17 Kingsley Street, alleged to have been improperly transferred in the year XXXX. I didn't hear every word. I was looking at Vanessa. She still held her posture, but her hands twisted the edge of her coat. Karma doesn't come with thunder. It comes in the way your hands forget how to be still. Our side began. Miss Fletcher laid out the evidence. Hospital records from that year. I was undergoing postpartum recovery, high fever, blood loss. Notes stated, not fully lucid. The transfer form was signed in my hospital bed, with no independent legal witness. Extracted text messages from my mother's phone. Just let me handle the paperwork, she doesn't understand any of it. A handwritten statement from my mother, confirming Vanessa had asked her to bring the papers under the pretense of temporary safekeeping. I didn't look at Vanessa. I didn't need to. I heard the soft tap of the judge's pen. Does the defendant have a response to these claims? Vanessa's lawyer stood. He objected, argued the signatures were legal, said no coercion took place, insisted I had been in a sound mental state. Vanessa stayed silent, but when her lawyer used the phrase long-standing jealousy, I saw Miss Fletcher tilt her head, just slightly, like a hawk waiting for a clean strike. Your Honor, she began, voice calm. My client's silence all these years wasn't jealousy. It was survival. When no one believes you, you learn to swallow the truth like cold rice every day. Today she speaks it through the law. Then she held up a handwritten letter, a short paragraph. My words. I don't want to reclaim the past. I just want my name back. The judge nodded, quietly. The hearing didn't end with a verdict, but the judge ordered an immediate freeze on any sale or refinancing of the Kingsley apartment and required Vanessa to submit all company financials from the past 3 years. Vanessa stood, pale, stunned. Camera shutters clicked in rapid fire. Her smile faltered, and that proud neck finally bent, not from remorse, but because there was nowhere else to look. Lucas met me as we left the courthouse. She thought truth was something she could control, he said. But truth doesn't sign exclusive contracts. I looked at him and nodded. I don't know what the final verdict will be, but today, I wasn't silent. He looked at me with the same gaze I remembered from his hospital bed, quiet, steady, and full of gratitude. Thank you, he whispered, for standing up. For me, for yourself. The news broke on a quiet Wednesday morning. I was making coffee in the kitchen when my phone buzzed nonstop. No messages, no missed calls, just a flood of links, news articles, social media threads, financial blogs. The first headline read, Vanessa Monroe Corporation under investigation for financial misconduct and illicit funding. I didn't click. I just looked at the words, letting them echo slowly inside my mind. Then I pulled out a chair and sat down, the spoon still in my hand, coffee untouched. No triumph, no rage. Just a strange stillness, somewhere between emptiness and relief. Lucas explained everything later that afternoon. We met at the small office of the support center, nearly complete now. He brought printouts of 2 articles and a report from the tax authority. They've started going through her company records, he said, placing the papers on the desk. Because the court demanded full transparency. And once they traced the origin accounts, things started to crack. You mean? She didn't just use your apartment as loan collateral. She used your name, someone who once received government assistance, to dodge taxes through a shadow entity. I blinked. For the first time, I saw it clearly. Vanessa never needed me to love. She needed me to be small, easy to control. Lucas continued, investors are pulling out, the media's turning. People like strong women, but they don't forgive those who build empires on borrowed kindness. 3 days later, Vanessa appeared on national television. Her first public statement since the court hearing. I hadn't planned to watch, but Lucas turned on the screen. Just one segment, he said. She sat across from a well-known anchor, the same one who once called her a modern feminist icon. But today, that gaze had changed. Vanessa wore black. Her hair was down. No red lipstick, no sharp stares. I was betrayed, she said, her voice less steady than before, used by those I trusted most. The host interrupted. Are you referring to your sister? Vanessa hesitated. Then, I don't want to speak about her, but if she's chosen confrontation, I will defend what I've built. I turned off the TV. No anger, no disappointment, just tired. Tired that she still didn't understand. The real loss wasn't the apartment or the company. It was what could have still been saved. That night, I stood on the balcony. The sky was starless. The wind rustled through bare branches. Lucas stood beside me, holding a mug of tea. You okay? I nodded. I'm not glad she's falling. I just know it was always going to happen. He looked at me for a moment, then said, Karma doesn't come to punish. It comes to restore balance. I turned to him. And what if I'm the one who falls tomorrow? He smiled, faintly. Then I'll be there. Not to lift you up, but to sit beside you until you want to rise. I don't know why I still lock the door twice every night. Maybe it's from all those years living alone, raising a child, always half expecting the worst, and knowing no one would stand in front of me if it came. Tonight was no different. I had just turned off the last light and marked my page in a book when the doorbell rang. Slow. Very slow. A chime that wasn't urgent. More like the person outside was still deciding whether to ring it at all. I looked through the peephole. It was Vanessa. No makeup, no high bun, no designer blazer, just a long gray coat. Her arms wrapped around her shoulders like she was cold. Her eyes were swollen, maybe from lack of sleep, maybe from crying. I opened the door, said nothing, didn't step back either. Can I have a few minutes? She asked, her voice smaller than I remembered. No arrogance, no performance. I nodded, didn't invite her in, but moved aside, just enough to mean, if you want in, you walk in yourself. She sat on the couch like someone drained. Her eyes scanned the room, my daughter's toy corner, an old tea mug on the table, a tiny pair of slippers by the window. I poured water, set it in front of her, sat across. No questions. No reaching for what was broken. I know I went too far, she started. I just looked. I was wrong, not just because I got caught, but because I now know I've got no one left I can still call family. Still, I said nothing. Not out of hatred, but because I wanted her to say it without needing a nod. I took the apartment, used your name, silenced you. Mom believed me, the media did too. And while everything revolved around me, I erased you from the picture." She paused, drank a sip of water. Her voice trembled, but she steadied it. "But you stood up, even when I did everything to make sure you couldn't." It was the first time in years she called me sister. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she said. "Not yet. Just one thing. Don't let your daughter grow up hating me." I clenched my hands gently. My daughter, the same girl Vanessa once used as a cruel joke. "You don't have to say anything," she added. "I just needed to know you opened the door tonight. That alone is more than I deserve." She stood. No hugs, no tears, no flowery apologies, just a small bow of her head. Then she walked out. I locked the door behind her. Not from fear, but because some things are meant to stay on the other side. Lucas called right then. "I just saw her leaving the building," he said calmly. "You okay?" I leaned my forehead against the door and smiled faintly. "She came, said one honest thing, then left." "And did you forgive her?" I didn't answer right away. "Not yet, but maybe. Forgiveness starts by not keeping every door shut forever." The sun was kind on opening day. Not harsh, just warm enough to shine through the tall windows of the center, where once quiet women now stepped in without needing to ask, "Am I allowed here?" We named it the second room. Because everyone deserves another room, after the first one closed them out. That's what I said when we chose the name. Lucas stood beside me at the opening. Nothing formal, no press, just a small gathering. A few of the first women enrolled in our programs, a few neighbors, a few single moms holding children close. My mother came too. She didn't say much, just sat in a corner, quietly watching as I welcomed each woman, showed them how to fill out forms, build a schedule, pick the classes that fit. When it was time for my speech, I didn't read from notes, I just said what was true. I used to think I was a burden, that I should shrink myself so others could shine. But then I realized, if I stay silent, my daughter learns silence. If I stay down, women like me think they have to stay down forever. Today, we're not opening a building, we're opening a door, the second door. And hopefully, no one has to stand alone behind the first one again. Later, I stepped outside, where the kids were playing tag in the yard. My daughter ran toward me, holding a little ball, laughing. "Mom, I taught her how to color the sun with the yellow crayon." I pulled her into my arms, and across the garden, Lucas stood, just watching. He didn't say a word, but in that one nod, I saw it. Everything was finally in the right place. Family doesn't always begin with blood. Sometimes it begins with the ones who stay when you fall, and never let go when you rise. The story ends there. No grand revenge, no explosive downfall. Just a woman, once cast aside, who dared to return to the center of her own life and begin.